Before we get to this week's episode of Business Over a Brew, let me tell you about my friends at Roberts Motors. You know, one of our favorite episodes here on the show was when we had a chance to sit down with Sam and John Roberts. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode, go back and take a look at it. It's great to see the interaction between not only two business partners, but of course father and son as well. They really epitomize what a local business is all about. Number one, doing business the right way, giving back to the community. If you have a chance, you may not buy a car from there, but at least give them the opportunity. Shop robertsmotors.com. You get more at Roberts Motors Ford. More selection, more value. Each vehicle they sell comes with the Roberts Rewards Value Package, which includes oil changes for 2 years, loaner cars, car washes, and much more. Get more at Roberts Motors Ford. Check them out at robertsmotors.com. Now enjoy this week's episode of Business Over a Brew. Welcome to Business Over a Brew, the show where we talk business with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business people, all while enjoying a nice brew at the Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier Hotel in Alton. In this episode, we'll talk with State Farm Insurance Agent Karen Wilson. She'll tell us how being with State Farm has always been a family affair for her, why she thinks community involvement is of the utmost importance, and how there really isn't much difference between being a teacher and being a State Farm agent. It's the Business Over a Brew podcast from the Great Rivers Tap and Grill in Alton. Welcome to Business Over a Brew. I'm your host, Nick Darr. Pleased to be joined in this episode by Karen Wilson with State Farm Insurance. Karen, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, as always. I always like to start with just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and where'd you grow up?
Gosh, well, I am an Alton girl, born and raised my children here, and just love the Riverbend area. It's in my blood, and I have done a variety of things. I've been a stay-at-home mom for about 15 years. I've worked in my father's State Farm office as a young student. I was a middle school teacher and administrator in the Alton School District, and then made a career change and came to State Farm as an agent, and I've been doing that for 17 years.
I guess we'll let you plug your university too if you'd like. I mean, we're kind of
Mizzou.
Illinois people here.
I'm went to Mizzou and also SIU, Edwardsville, so I want to include them as well.
Sure, right,
Yes.
right. For those that don't know that are watching, tell us about your family, because a lot of people will know the name.
Well, my maiden name is Newdecker. So Dale Newdecker is my father. He was a State Farm agent for 48 years. And my brother Scott Newdecker is a State Farm agent, and he's been one for 30 some odd years. He's younger than I am, but I'm the newbie in State Farm as far as the family goes. And my husband Dennis worked at the refinery and is retired and enjoying that, and of course, there's always jobs to be done. We have some rental property, and he stays busy. We have 3 children and 8 grandchildren.
Oh, that's great.
So busy.
You said before we came on the air that the day your dad started, Scott was being brought home from the hospital?
Exactly. The day Dad started with State Farm was the day Scott was born, and my mom was waiting at the door with a suitcase when he got home, and then, 20 some odd years later, Scott becomes a State Farm agent.
So you talked about a little bit working in your dad's office growing
Yes.
up. Talk to us about that experience.
Well, it was really a different time. Everything, there weren't computers or anything like that, and so it was very much a person-to-person experience, unlike everyone on their phones and computers, and they want to click in and dial in now, which is great, but people smoked everywhere, so there was ashtrays on the desks, and people would come in and talk to you and smoke and all that. But the one thing that I feel I miss now that was so cool when I worked in my dad's office, I had to file every little piece of paper. So I knew people's names, I knew where they lived, I had a connection with them because I physically filed their things. Now everything's so digital that you don't see as much, and so you don't have that same type of relationship.
And then, so kind of fast forward a little bit to your days as an educator.
Yes.
Tell us about that role and what has translated well from there to being a State Farm agent.
Well, I was a middle school teacher, and I loved middle school, which many people think, oh my gosh, that is not the time that I would choose. But I do love middle school students. I feel like that is a very pivotal time in their lives, and they can turn to the dark side, or the whole world can just open up to them. And so did a lot of experiential things and tried to get everyone involved in the classroom. And I think that translates to business. I'm still in education. I'm just have a different subject now. And because we all pay a lot for insurance, it's important that we know what we have, how we're covered, or why we need to be protected, and help the consumer make choices on their own, but educated choices.
So you grew up around an agency, obviously, and then your brother had one as well,
Right.
Scott, that you helped out in.
I did.
But it was a long time before you came back to. Did you always kind of have it in the back of your mind that maybe it was something you wanted to try?
Well, not really. It wasn't that there's no way I wanted to do it. I just didn't see myself in that role. But, as life changes and being in education and also in business, I knew that I wanted to have more involvement in the community. And when I was teaching and when I was an administrator, I was somewhat involved, but you are so tied to the school during the day and after school programs and that it was just very difficult to do that. So by making this transition, I'm still able to support education. I've been involved in things within the school district and Lewis and Clark that mean a lot to me, and so I feel like I can support education in a different way and yet run my own business. There are things I can control about my business that I couldn't control about the world of education.
Right. If there's a client that you need to get rid of, you just get rid of them. But students, you can't do that? Is that? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no,
I'm
no,
sure you
no.
have no clients
Yeah,
like
right.
that.
Well, the nice thing is when you see a need, you're able to attend to it at that time. It's really funny. It was a learning experience when I first became an agent, and I am not an employee of State Farm. I'm a independent contractor, so it's my business and all that. My husband was sport because it took a lot of investment in order for me to get off the ground. And I remember making payroll out of my home equity line of credit checkbook. And when I taught, no matter what happened, I got a paycheck.
Right, yeah.
And so that was a big learning curve for me. But when I first opened my business, I went over to the copier and I hit the button and I said, if I want 30 copies, I can make 30 copies. And anyone in education would understand what I mean by that.
If my wife is watching right now, she's a teacher, and she said, "Oh, wouldn't that be great?"
Oh, yes, yes.
What were some of the keys for you now that you're on kind of the other side of that? Have been doing it successfully for a long time. What were some of the keys for you to start to have a successful office? Is there a moment where you can point to and say, okay, I think I'm going to make it?
Well, I have always said that the 5-year mark for businesses seems to be that magic number that you've tried and failed, and you've done some things that you wish you hadn't, and you've spent some money and maybe done some things that you'd like a do-over on, and you have learned from those things, and you've learned from your successes. So by the fifth year, I felt like it was no longer a hobby. It was actually, I was making money and making a mark. People were seeing me as a business owner and as a legitimate State Farm agent. In the world, sometimes there are male roles and female roles, and when you talk about construction and cars and things that are going on, there are those who don't feel like I have the life, women don't have the same life experiences, and so there was a point where I felt like I had to kind of prove to people that I knew what I was talking about. So,
Sure.
that was a little bump in the road. I don't feel that way now. The world has come a long way in 17 years.
Right, right. Well, I think one of the things that's probably been a difference maker for you is and I don't think you did this to necessarily to be successful in your business, but you've always been so involved in a lot of different causes in the community as well.
Well, I'm kind of a passionate person, so if I hear a story or I see something that needs to be done, just how can I help? Maybe that's part of the insurance thing. How can I help? Getting that call in the middle of the night that their house is on fire, and so I go out there with my checkbook and my hair standing up and see how we can get them settled in. Well, it's kind of in the community. It's my community. I mean, I love it, and I can't imagine anybody thinking that the River Bend isn't a great place to live. And so my father was involved with Bucket Brigade and Pride Incorporated, so that was just a real natural for me to be on that board. And Monica Bristow kind of got me involved with the Growth Association, and I got on that board and eventually became chairman. And I absolutely loved that experience, getting to know the Riverbend area and all the businesses and what everybody does, and how much people pull together. And I think it's even greater now, especially that small business revolution sort of kicked a lot of us in gear.
Right, and I think I don't know if it's like this in other communities, but I am always amazed by how involved most of our business owners are in helping the community and even helping competitors. It's such a great spirit of, hey, if we're all successful, the community will be successful.
That is so true. I mean, it's an old phrase of a high tide lifts all boats, but I truly believe that. It doesn't do any good to badmouth competition or compete to the point of, my business can't survive if your business does. That's old thinking, very old thinking. And there's enough of life out there for all of us. We're all doing okay, and we can help others. And, I would hope that when we are giving back, we're doing it because it's the right thing and not because it's going to further our businesses. But that's sort of a nice little added bonus.
Sure. I know one of the things you're proud of also is your office team and the stability you've had there.
Oh, golly. I am very lucky because in small business, sometimes there's turnover and people looking for that next great thing. And I'm very fortunate. My office manager happens to be my daughter, Meredith. And she has now been with me, it'll be 11 years next month. And she actually lived in Cape Girardeau at the time that I approached her about moving her and her husband and their son at that time up here. And, will we still be able to talk at Thanksgiving if we're with
Right.
each other all the time? And it's been wonderful. And she loves our customers, and they love her, and she really takes good care of the business. And then Katie was with me at the beginning, and She was with me for 5 years, and then she and her husband and her 2 children moved to Florida. And she was with an agent in Florida for 8 years, and then they moved back here to be closer to family. And now she's been back with me for 5 years in September. And so I've got this great group of gals that are fully licensed, have a lot of experience, very loyal to the customers, and very helpful. You know, I'm very fortunate there.
I'm curious, talking to a lot of family businesses, whether it's husband and wife or with the kids involved, how do you approach it in terms of when you're away from the office with your daughter? Is it we don't talk about business when we're not at the office, or is it not like that?
Well, you know, it's funny. Sometimes we talk about it and sometimes we don't. We probably get cues from our spouses and other family
That's
members
enough.
about, But we can talk about business enough at the office that we don't need to talk about business at other functions. So that works out pretty well.
Okay. 3 last questions. Number 1, what advice would you give specifically to maybe the female audience who's thinking about starting a business right now?
You know, do your homework and make sure that you're committed, and don't give up, and seek out other women, the networking, the strength of any kind of empowerment groups, networking groups. Ask questions, ask for help, but don't give up, and it can happen.
For your clients, is there a common mistake that you see made that's you think, oh, that's cringeworthy, like
Oh,
that maybe you can help them avoid?
well, I think insurance is shared risk. So it's sort of, what are you willing to risk, and what are you willing to pay for somebody else to take on that risk? That's what insurance is all about. I just think that a lot of times people don't realize what's at risk, whether it's their car or their home, liability, that sort of thing. Especially when it comes to life insurance and disability insurance. To me, the perfect world is that everybody gets the coverage they need and no one has to do a GoFundMe to take care of a family member.
Well said.
Whether it's their house burning down or something,
Sure.
you know.
Sure. And if maybe an aspiring female business owner or a potential client wanted to get a hold of you, Karen, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, well, you can call, you can click, you can walk. You can call the office at 618-466-5774 or email me at Karen@KarenWilsonINS, short for insurance.com. And you can find me online, KarenWilsonINS.com.
Well, Karen, you're a real asset to the business community here in the Riverbend, and we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for watching the Business Over a Brew podcast. For more video of me drinking free beer with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business leaders, visit AltonDailyNews.com and click on the podcast page. To enjoy a great meal with great food, great service, and great atmosphere, visit Great Rivers Tap and Grill inside the Best Western Premier in Alton. Check out some of their new menu items at GreatRiversTapandGrill.com.